If we may start by reciting Surah Al-Fatiha in honor of Sayyidah Narjis, mother of our 12th Imam. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء، حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة. يا غريب الغرباء، يا مظلوم كربلاء، السلام على من جعل الله الشفاء في تربته. السلام على من الإجابة تحت قبته. السلام على ساكن كربلاء. فيا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي. يا سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال مولانا إمام جعفر بن محمد أصدق الصادقين صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. أحيوا أمرنا رحم الله من أحيا أمرنا. صدق الإمام وآمنا به. زينوا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. Over the days of Muharram, the lovers of Ahlul Bayt display and portray their love and their grief over the tragedy of Karbala in a number of different ways. This expression of grief many times signifies the intensity of the grief in itself. And portraying your love and expressing your love for Sayyid al-Shuhada is built or manifested through a number of actions, some of which we described in the nights earlier, beginning from the very simple act of wearing black clothes to weeping and shedding tears over Sayyid al-Shuhada. In tonight's discussion, we will analyze the concept of Latm, or the concept which we famously or commonly understand as matam. We will analyze the validity of this concept and clarify its position within Islam and within the concept of commemorating the legacy of Sayyid al-Shuhada, because it is through this display of love, this action of matam or latam, that a number of nawasibs and enemies of the madhab of Ahlul Bayt, they have taken this opportunity and they have taken this method of manifestation of love towards Sayyid al-Shuhada to put the Shia in the limelight and ridicule them for their beliefs, ridicule them for the way they express their faith. And to take a step forward, they have used this action as a premise to label the Shia as kuffar, kafir, outside the realm of Islam altogether. And to back up their stances on this, ya rate if they had stopped at calling us kuffar. But they go ahead and justify the shedding of blood and the killing of Shias based on this action, or latam or mata. In either way, they justify these actions and justify this labeling of Shias and lovers of Ahlul Bayt as kuffar on the premise that this action of latam or this action of matam is an action that contradicts the Quran, number one, and number two, it is an action which was unprecedented within the seerah of Rasulullah and the seerah of the Ashab, and hence is termed as a bid'ah. We will try and understand or reply back to these objectives from both these perspectives. Number one, using the Quran, and number two, evaluating the Sunnah. In either way, the stance of the madhab of Ahlul Bayt is that even if there is another sect that claims to be following Islam or that claims to follow Rasulullah, if they perform practices that we feel are outside the da'irah or outside the boundaries of fiqh, our Ahlul Bayt still teaches us tolerance and adopting a method of non-violence. We have mentioned this a number of times, and the repetition is to place or to show the importance of this position. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When we try to reply to this objective from the point of view of the Quran, the most commonly stated verse in the Quran, which is used in trying to establish the impermissibility of performing latam or matam, is the verse in the Quran from Surah Al-Baqarah, number 195, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, La tulku bi-aydikum, or La tulku anfusakum bi-aydikum ila tuhlika. La tulku bi-aydikum ila tuhlika. Do not, the basic translation of this verse, do not through your hands throw yourselves into destruction or perdition. This is the basic translation of this verse. So they say, based on this verse, you cannot use your hands to send yourself or cause yourself destruction of your life. When we analyze this verse, and we look at the opinions of the Mufassirin, both from the school of thought of the Shia and of the Ahl Sunnah, you will find that Mufassirin come with 4 avenues in regards to tafsir of this verse. Number 1, when we look at the reason of revelation, the asbab al-nuzul for this verse was revealed at a time of war, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or where Rasulullah was encouraging people to stand in self-defense against exterior attacks. And this verse was revealed upon those people who were reluctant in contributing towards the cause of jihad at that time. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, by you holding back your donations, by you holding back your contributions, you yourselves are contributing towards your own destruction. Number 1, as per the asbab al-nuzul. Number 2, when Mufassirin and Fuqaha look at the implications of this verse, the first conclusion that is derived is that it is not permissible for a person to take his own life. Yani, you cannot use or you cannot commit suicide. As per Islam, as per our fuqaha, in regards to this verse and the number of traditions that we have, to commit suicide is haram and is one of the major sins as per the religion of Islam. Another conclusion that we are Mufassirin are able to derive from this verse is that a person cannot commit or a person cannot inflict upon himself harm to the extent that he dismembers a part of his body. He severes a part of his limb and it becomes unusable forever. So, for a person to mutilate a part of his body using his own hands or himself committing any form that will make a part of his limb or a part of his body unusable altogether, this is not acceptable as per Islam. And in the general context of this verse, the Mufassirin are of the opinion that you should refrain, the Muslims are to refrain from committing any action that will lead towards their destruction. Over here, the word for aidi, yani for hands, is not taken in its literal understanding, 2 hands, as in with 10 fingers, but do not perform any action that will ultimately lead towards your destruction. And this ultimate destruction or this ultimate form of being perished is to be landed in the fire of Jahannam, for a person to land himself through his actions in the hellfire. For the general understanding of this verse is that do not commit any sins lest you destroy yourselves by denying yourselves Jannah and ending up in the place where the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is manifested. When we look into the boundaries and the parameters of tafsir that have been given to us by the Mufassirin, you will see, yes, committing suicide is impermissible, it is not acceptable, but you don't need the Quran. The Aql is enough for us to tell, for you to tell you this. Furthermore, it is not permissible to cut off or sever a part of the limb altogether such that it is not usable. Again, the Quran is only in a form of ta'qeed, whereas the Aql already places this hukum for us. When we look into these boundaries, you will see that this verse in itself does not talk about, neither does it advocate refraining from a certain action that may cause apparent temporary harm to the body. This is a misunderstanding of the Quran. Rather, not only misunderstanding, this is tahrif, distortion of the interpretation of the Quran. Because Mufassirin of the Ahl Shia and Ahl Sunnah have carried the understandings as per these 4 parameters from time immemorial. For this argument that a person puts forward, that every action that causes apparent temporary harm to the body is haram, is a premise that is not warranted by the Quran, and in particular this verse. Number 1. Number 2, who said that every action that causes apparent temporary harm or pain to the body is haram? Who said this? Whose logic is this? If this was the case, then for a person to recite Salatul Layl, to leave his sleep and recite Salatul Layl, for a person to stay up the whole night and sacrifice his sleep in Laylatul Qadr, performing ibadah, would also be haram. Why? Because psychologists and people from within the field of medicine have told us that a human body needs 7 to 8 hours. Sure. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It's okay. Scholars within the field of medicine have told us that for a human body to function at its optimal level, it needs Okay, so the knock is from who? From the children's or from the ladies' side?
Must be knocking a child.
No, they can't hear.
They can't hear.
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
If you may kindly recite aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. صلوا على النبي. Okay, let me go to that. Let me go.
Is it? Check.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
It's good. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It's okay. We can continue. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. For our conversation was that from the Quran in itself, and keeping in mind Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 195, that verse in the Quran that is popularly quoted to refute the concept of Latm, is a verse that is used out of context and within the parameter or within the parameters of tafsir. It in no way suggests prohibition of causing temporary apparent harm to the body. And then we said that if there was this rule, who said that this rule exists, that every action that causes temporary harm which is apparent to the body is haram? Who established this rule? If this rule was to be put into place, or by this logic, then a person would say that staying up the whole night during Laylatul Qadr and performing ibadah and performing worship will also be haram. Why? Because researchers within the field of medicine have told us that the human body needs a minimum of 7 to 8 hours sleep such that it can function at its optimal level. Furthermore, when you sleep during these 7 to 8 hours, this sleep is a very important part towards a person's health, because during these 7 to 8 hours, the immune system and the nervous system gets a chance to rejuvenate itself. At this time, the skeletal muscles within the body relax. Hence, a person has energy to move forward for the next day. Well, if sleep is such an important concept, such that the stability or the proper functioning of the immune system and the nervous system is contingent upon a minimum of 8 hours sleep, why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the Prophet commanded us to stay up the whole night during Laylatul Qadr? Is this not a case of self-harm towards the body? Again, the key word over here is temporary harm and apparent harm. Number one. Number two, if this logic was to be put into play, that everything or every action that causes temporary apparent harm to the body is haram, then by this logic, for a woman to give birth would also be haram, because it includes sustaining unbearable pain, a pain that a person cannot even imagine. And there is possibility of death due to the extreme pain during childbirth. Yet, you do not see anyone come forward and say that within the religion of Islam, childbirth is haram because it causes pain to the mother. La. Number three, by this logic, even established things that are mubah would become haram. The sport of karate, for example, wrestling, even playing football. These are sports that include heavy physical contact that cause apparent pain to the body. When a person is weightlifting, he pushes his muscles to the highest level. He strains them to the maximum possible extent. Why? There is pain included in all these activities. Yet Islam does not come and tell you because these actions entail pain, then they are haram. So this concept in itself, that every action that causes temporary apparent pain to the body is haram, by logic in itself is disproved. And through the Quran, it is out of context. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Rather, when you look into the ahadith, you will see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah in his seerah invited and set forward the example for a person to go or make sure or attempt for him to endure pain in the way of ibadah. Stretch the body to the highest limits when you are trying to attain a higher level of spirituality. Which is why you will see Rasulullah recited Salah the entire night. He would spend a big part of the night reciting Salat that are mustahab, while he was standing not only on his feet but standing on his toes. To the extent that Salama says the feet of the Prophet would become swollen out of prayer, which were mustahab for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If causing self-harm and swelling of the feet was haram, then why would Rasulullah do this? Again, you come and see that within the seerah of Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He performed Hajj 25 times during his lifetime on foot, which meant at that time taking on a journey from Makkah or from Medina to Makkah, a distance which is over 300 kilometers. Ashab of the Seerah have told us that many times Imam Hassan would reach Makkah, and even before he began the tawaf and the manasik of the Hajj, his feet would be swollen and bleeding. They would tell him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, why do you not sit on a camel or on a horse to make your trip much easier towards Makkah? Have mercy on your body such that you can perform the manasik of Hajj. He says, this is my symbol of loyalty towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look, over here we come to understand that when a person puts his body through pain or endures pain, then the validity behind enduring this pain is contingent upon the goal that he wants to achieve. For now, we have a relationship between the desired goal from the action and the path towards the action, or the path towards that goal. If that high, lofty goal denotes making the body endure some temporary pain, then it is praised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Sajjad, it is narrated, one of the titles of Imam Sajjad is Dhul Thafinat. Why? The person who had, because Imam Sajjad would perform extended sujoods for hours upon hours and would spend the night crying, they say that the skin from his forehead and the skin from his knees would peel out. And every year they would take this skin that is starting to peel and has become as dry as the skin or the knees of a camel, and he would cut out these pieces of skin and bury them. When a person spends even 3 or 4 minutes performing sajda on a very sharp object, how does it hurt the forehead? How does it scrape against the skin? Imam Sajjad did this all in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not once, not twice, not thrice, but 25 years. Why? There was a reason and a goal behind making the body endure such hardship. And from here, we realize that there is a deep correlation between the physical body and the soul. There is a falsafa behind this. Man is created of two, the body and the soul. The body is restricted to time and space. The body is limited as per its natural capacity. But the soul, the ruh has no limitation whatsoever. The ruh is not constricted by time. The ruh is not constricted by space. The ruh, because of its abstract nature, cannot be constrained by limitations. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the prophets, through their extended istihbabs, as in through their hard efforts and subjecting their pain to body, subjecting their body to pain, wanted to show us that by you exerting force on your body, you can liberate your soul. Let your soul understand that it has no limit. Let your soul reach the highest levels of Jannah, and do not let your spirituality be contained by the limitations of your body. Let your soul flourish. And tell yourself that your spirituality is not limited to the capacity of your body. You are more than what your body limits you. This is the deep philosophy behind the relationship of the body and the soul and attaining spiritual perfection. And when a person realizes this, he hakikatan surpasses every aspect or every limitation of his body. You look at the Masaib that we recited yesterday for Hur or for Habib ibn Madahir, a person who is 73 years old, who has been thirsty and hungry for 3 days. Despite all this, in the scorching or under the scorching sun, went into the battlefield and fought a jihad where he killed 90 horsemen. The physical body does not have a capacity to endure pain or to endure hunger and thirst at this level for 3 days with this intensity. And then after that still have the power to go and do your jihad to the extent that you kill 90 from the side of the enemies. This power that was manifested within Habib ibn Madahir, which was displayed through the killing of 90 people, was not an expression of his bodily strength because of his big muscles or biceps. La! This was an expression of the power of the ruh of Habib ibn Madahir. And this is the exercise which we are supposed to conduct and understand through Latm and matam. For the people who understand, for the people who contemplate. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The more we understand the rituals that we perform or the actions that we perform while commemorating the days of Sayyid al-Shuhada, and collectively these are known as the Sha'air Husayniyya, the more we understand them, the more we understand what they symbolize, the more we understand the potential that it can open up for us, the more we will work hard to preserve it, the less we will become enemies of it. You will find fewer and fewer people being enemies of matam and azadari if they understood what it symbolizes, within our school and outside our school. All this in regards to the concept of Latm and the concept of making the body endure a substantial level of pain or apparent temporary pain to get towards a higher goal. To reply back to the Nawasib and the Kuffar who tell us that this concept of Latm and the Matam is a bid'ah and was never done during the time of Rasulullah by any time of the Ashabs, then we ask them to give us proof that this action never happened. Rather, we take the fight to them at the forefront and tell them on the contrary. It is mentioned in books of the Ahl Sunnah that when Rasulullah was martyred, there were wives of Rasulullah who performed Latm, yani Matam, and Ashab. When we use the word matam, in our context, the Indo-Pak context, matam, hitting the hand on the chest with the hand. If you say ma'tam, or you look at the word ma'tam, as per the Arabic world, it means majlis. And for them, matam, what we say, hitting the chest, is latam. Latam, by definition, is to hit the cheek or the outward part of the body, any outward part of the body, the chest or the head, with the back of your hand, yani with your palm. So when they come and tell us that Latm is bid'ah, to hit the hand or to hit the body with the outer part of the hand is haram and is bid'ah because nobody from the wives or the prophets or the companions of the prophet did that, we tell them on the contrary, we have proof from this. Number one, you refer to the book Al-Bidayah wal-Nihaya by Ibn al-Kathir, one of their greatest historians. He mentions to us that when he records now the times or the last moments of Rasulullah, when the fever with which Rasulullah was inflicted increased in magnitude or increased in its intensity, yani the pain of Rasulullah was intense. The historians tell us that Bilal al-Habashi, Ashab, Is there any doubt that Bilal was from the Sahabi? La. Not only was he a normal Sahabi, but he was the mu'adhin of Rasulullah. The one who was not able to pronounce the sheen, but would pronounce it as seen. Yet in his honor, Rasulullah said that the seen of Bilal is understood or rewarded or taken as a sheen by the malaika and by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This great companion, when he saw Rasulullah in a state of agitation, he came out running from the house of Rasulullah into Masjidun Nabawi, hitting his head with all his energy, crying out, I wish I was not born to see a day like this when Rasulullah is in such pain. This is Ashab, Bilal from the Ashab of Rasulullah, one of the most trustworthy Sahabis of Rasulullah, who performed the Latm. They say, فَلَّتَمَ وَجْهَهُ عَلَى رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. He beat and slapped his face for Rasulullah. Number one. Again, refer back to the same book, Al-Bidaya wal-Nihaya by Ibn al-Kathir. He mentions a hadith, or he mentions a tradition, that Aisha herself performed matam. Ajib. How? Where is the tradition? The tradition tells you, again, in the same book, she says, Anna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. When you read the book Nihaya wal Bidaya, you will not find sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. The alihi is dropped. This one we have added because it is part of our aqidah. But when you find in the book, you'll see that alihi is not there. Either way, she mentions, Anna Rasulullah قبض وهو في حجري فوضعت رأسه على وسادة ولتمت وجهي مع النساء مع بقية النساء. She says that when Rasulullah breathed his last breath, when he died, his head was on my lap. So I took the head of Rasulullah and I placed it on a pillow. And I stood up and I began to beat and slap my face out of grief for Rasulullah. Mu'mineen, as the way she is considered, is it not? Does anybody have the audacity to say that Aisha committed bid'ah? They point the fingers at the Shia. But the wives of Rasulullah themselves had performed Latm as an expression of grief and remorse. The intensity of that grief could not be contained, so it was vented out through hitting herself or hitting yourselves on the chest or on the face. فَهَذَا, why are the Shia killed for a practice at the very minimum that Aisha herself performed? And even as we stated at the beginning of the lecture, if it was according to their fiqh something that is bid'ah, it is not an action that should be justified through which they are killed. Upon what basis are the blood of the Shias spilled in Pakistan and in Bahrain and in the rest of the world? Ala ba'd, these are from their books, not from our books. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Before we look at the ahadith that state, or the hadith that shows us the desirability of performing matam from our madhab, and looking into the seerah of the Ahlul Bayt, it would be appropriate to look into the philosophy of matam and the philosophy of Latm and what it symbolizes, in addition to the first philosophy that we have given. And if we were to understand this philosophy, it will add value to our own azadari. It will give us the desired results from which we are supposed to obtain through azadari. Number two, action upon this azadari. And number three, we will start to understand why the enemies of tashayyu', why the enemies of the madhab of Ahlul Bayt are against matam and azadari. See, when a person listens to the musibah and the masa'ib of Sayyid al-Shuhada, and his tears begin to flow, this grief inside his heart cannot be contained. This grief needs to be ventilated. And psychologists tell us that the method or the means that is selected to ventilate your grief will depend upon the intensity of the grief. Therefore, when a person is not afflicted or is made sad by an issue, but it is not that big of a big deal, you will see that he will not cry, but rather he will become silent. However, if that issue was to afflict him and affect him to a greater level, then he would manifest that grief through weeping. And as the intensity of the grief continues, the intensity of the weeping also continues. But we say that the intensity of the grief that we carry in our heart in regards to the martyrdom of Sayyid al-Shuhada is a form of grief that cannot be contained. Despite whatever means of expression you use, you cannot fully ventilate that grief from within your heart or from outside your heart. When a person beats his chest or beats his face for Sayyid al-Shuhada, beats his head for Sayyid al-Shuhada, this is an expression of a person saying, Ya Sayyid al-Shuhada, I wish it was me who was in your place receiving those wounds. I wish it was I who went into the battlefield and lost my arm instead of Abbas. And then out of this, as a result, he begins to hit his chest out of remorse. This is a manifestation of the last sentence which we recite in Ziyarat Waritha and Ziyarat Ashura. فَيَا لَيْتَنِي كُنْتُ مَعَكُمْ فَأَفُوزَ فَوْزًا عَظِيمًا. Number one, manifestation of that word. Number two, when a person hits his chest and he hits his head out of remorse, this person is expressing a grief that is so intense. When he listens that Sayyid al-Shuhada's chest was filled with arrows on the day of Ashura, he beats his chest saying, how can my chest not have a wound when the chest of Sayyid al-Shuhada was filled with arrows? When he beats his head, he remembers how Ruqayya was slapped by Shimar. So he says, how is it that I do not slap my face when the faces of the daughters of Rasulullah was slapped? And from here, you will see that one of the steps or one of the phases that a matami goes through is that he says, Yabna Rasulallah, I want to feel an ounce of the pain that you felt on the day of Ashura. In fact, we are not even justified to say an ounce, because that pain that a person feels when he hits his chest is not even comparable to the pain of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Yet the only way a person can somehow increase his understanding and affiliation for Sayyid al-Shuhada is through this hitting of his chest. And even behind this there is a philosophy. Why? Because when you listen in the Masa'ib, that Sayyid al-Shuhada, his body was covered with arrows and he suffered undescribable pain. When the Khatib speaks these words, what happens to you as a listener? You try and imagine that pain inside your mind, which is what triggers the tears. At this time, you are in the realm of imagination. However, when you stand in the matam and you hit your chest and you begin to feel the pain in your chest and then think about the pain of Sayyid al-Shuhada, you have moved from the realm of imagination to another realm called the realm of existence. Because you feel pain on your own body, you relate that pain to the pain of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Two different fields of existence, which in itself moves you towards a greater affiliation towards Sayyid al-Shuhada. And this is a concept which is absolutely logical. And the sisters will be witness. Inshallah, Allah give the mothers a long life and their children a long life. But ask two women who are sitting in a majlis Husseini. One mother has lost a child in infancy and one mother is not, or one lady is not a mother. When the Masa'ib of Ali Asghar or Abdullah Ar-Radi is recited, which mother can feel more or affiliate more with the grief? The woman who does not have a child or a woman who has lost her child? The lady will tell you the mother who has lost her child will be able to relate to the grief of Rabab much more than this other woman. For when a person stands into matam, he tries to reenact and replicate a tiny percentage of the pain that the ashab and that Imam Hussein went through. When a person's chest or body goes sore after performing matam, the following day when he stands up to recite his Salatul Fajr and feels the soreness in his body, then he remembers the pain and the injuries which the ashab of Sayyid al-Shuhada felt when they stood to recite Salatul Khawf with him on the Day of Judgment. And it is based on this. A speaker can only create an environment of grief and can only rouse the emotions as per his words. He's restricted through the words. But when people stand up to hit their chest with this mind frame that we are there for you, Ya Aba Abdullah, and this is my basit, this is my very humble gesture of my loyalty towards you, you will see that the centers are filled with an electrifying sensation and the emotions are at a high, and every person who stands there, regardless of him being old or being young at that time, his emotional state is at such a high that he carries within him a revolutionary fervor, a burning desire to stand for his Imam, a burning desire to stand against dhulm. And it is based on this revolutionary fervor that he can motivate himself to change his life and practically stand up against dhulm tomorrow. And because of the potential that this matam carries, the people are enemies of matam. Do not think that they refrain you from doing matam just like that, because it seems to be barbaric. The enemies of Tashayyu have studied the madhab of Ahlul Bayt inside out and know which aspect of the madhab to attack and which aspect of the madhab to create shak in. Yes, we don't say that matam is the final goal. It is supposed to be a means, and a very powerful means through which a person will make a decision to change the way he lives his life. It is this revolutionary fervor and emotion inside him which builds or harvests the seeds of unconditional love for the Imam. And this is what is required for the dhuhur of the Imam. The 12th Imam has not reappeared. Why? Because people are not knowledgeable. There is not enough ilm in the dunya. There is ilm everywhere, ilm in the houses, but those 313 top-notch commanders whose hearts are like steel, who will give their lives for the Imam at the blink of an eye without thinking, are not there. And for a person to get to that level of hub, to get to that level of wilaya, these are the spiritual exercises that the Imams have implemented for us. Do not let the physical capacity of your body be a barrier towards your love for Sayyid al-Shuhada. This is the philosophy of matam and aza, which we need to understand. This is why we need to preserve these sha'air, so that tomorrow, when our youth, when the Shias go out into the real world to stand up against dhulm, they will not have taraddud, they will not waver. They will stand up for a principle that is right or wrong. Look into the reports, and I don't want to make this into a political statement, but look into the reports of this high-ranking official from the American government whose name was Michael Brandt. Look at here's the transcript of their seminar or their conference, which was held in 1983. Is there? It's present for everyone to access on the internet. Look at what Michael Brandt said at that time in 1983. He said the only way that we can control the Islamic Republic of Iran at that time and the Shia Ummah in general, wherever they are in the world, is to weaken their ties with Hussein that was martyred in Karbala. This flame, revolutionary flame that they have inside of them, separated from them. If you separate it from them and separate them from their marja'iyya, you will have conquered the Shias. Look through the history of who the enemies of Tashayyu or the enemies of Aza and Latm were. Throughout history, not only in the 80s, but even before that. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Hollywood media comes and tells you that people who do matam and people who do latm, in all its intensities, these are barbaric acts and uncivilized acts. Hollywood media, hakikatan, in reality, do not even have a right to make that statement. Why? Have you looked at Hollywood media or Hollywood productions, and do you see the type or the content within horror movies that are viewed for the purpose of leisure? We were looking through the internet. One of the horror movies that are one of the most goriest of movies that had the highest ratings and probably hit a big number within the box office was a movie called Saw. The horror movie, Saw. And apparently one scene in this movie is that there is a woman whose head is constrained by a metal, you can say, or a wooden frame. There's a wooden frame around her head. And this wooden frame then has metal spikes. So if the frame was to be constricted, it would, these metal piercings would crush through the woman's head. Now this wooden frame with metal spikes will crush this woman's skull, and she's alive, if she does not find a key to open this wooden frame around her head within 10 minutes. Tayyib. She has to find the key in 10 minutes. Where is the key? The key is inside the stomach of a person who is alive, and she needs to cut open this person's stomach while he is alive so she can take the key and open the frame and save herself. And this movie, it happened in its scene. The person is crying, shouting, whatever it is, Allahu Alam, for those who have watched the movie. Such type of barbaric acts are taken as a form of leisure, pleasure, entertainment. For entertainment, you can watch a woman cut another person's stomach, in which that stomach there is a key, which is like a treasure trove, stuck in between the intestines, which she needs to dig out and open. A person can watch that for the purpose of entertainment, and that is not considered barbarism. That is not considered jahiliyyah. That is not considered acts of violence. But when a person hits his chest to show his love and loyalty for the representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for a person who stood for the values of peace and justice, this is violence, this is barbarism. These people need to get their scales straight. And they are not a means, or they are not the reason for which we should change our belief. Hollywood media, Islam doesn't have a right to say anything against us. Yes, when it comes to the general public and the general understanding, the average Joes, the regular person who does not have any agenda against Islam, does not hold any animosity against Islam, for him, we need to explain to him the concept of matam, just like the way every other concept is explained to him. And if we see that this action is making him uncomfortable, then we refrain from it until we bring him to a level where he can understand the concept of imama. If he understands the concept of imama, then this concept of loyalty, even if it meant giving up your life for this person, will become badihi, will become very simple, straight by straight. Our talk is not with them. That one in its own place. Our talk is with those people from the Salafis and whoever is out there who literally and intentionally plan to destroy the madhab of Tashayyu. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When it comes to the desirability and the istihbab of performing Latm, as per the madhab of Ahlul Bayt, you will see that there is a tradition from our sixth Imam mentioned in the book of Sheikh Tusi, Tahdhibul Ahkam, one of the major sources that every faqih from the madhab of Ahlul Bayt needs to study such that he can reach any level of scholarship. Our sixth Imam in this states, or in one of his traditions mentions, وَشَكَكْنَا الْجُيُوبِ وَلَتَمْنَا الْخُدُودِ عَلَى حُسَيْنِ ibn Ali. He's talking about the women of Ahlul Bayt, including Sayyida Zainab, Kulthum, Rabab, and Sayyida Farwa. He says that these women over Sayyid al-Shuhada hit their cheeks and slapped their faces. And then he says, وَعَلَى مِثْلِهِ تُلْتَمْ الْخُدُودُ وَتَشُكُّ الْجُيُوبِ. He says, and it is on the likes of Sayyid al-Shuhada that the cheeks and the faces should be beaten. To beat the cheek is more painful than to beat the chest and to beat the head. So by tariqat al-awla, beating the chest is desirable in the madhab of Ahlul Bayt. Not only desirable, but expected, as per the grammatical structure of this verb. وَعَلَى مِثْلِهِ تُلْتَمْ الْخُدُودِ. For this is from the seerah of Imam as-Sadiq. This was from the recommendations of our sixth Imam. Not only from their recommendations, but we have within the seerah of Ahlul Bayt. Look at the poem that De'bil recites for Imam al-Ridha in his majlis during the days of Muharram. In one of the poems that he recites for Imam al-Ridha, he says, أَفَاطِمُ لَوْ خِلْتِ الْحُسَيْنَ مُجَدَّلًا وَقَدْ مَاتَ عَطْشَانًا بِشَطِّ الفرات إذا للتمت فاطم وجهها عنده وجرى الدمع العين بالوجانات. He says in this poem where Imam Rida is sitting in this majlis and Imam Rida is crying, he says, if Fatima was to come down and see the mangled body of Hussein, and she would have seen the way he was killed thirsty by the Furat, what would Zahra do? لَلَتَمْتِ فَاطِمَةَ خَدَّهُ عِنْدَهُ. She says Fatima would begin to beat her face for Hussein. Allah, Fatima beats her face, then who am I not to beat my chest? Ba'ad. An example from the ulama that lived just a couple of 100 years back, Ayatollah Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum, Marja Kabir at his time. Probably about 100 years back, 150 years back. At one time, during the day of Ashura, and perhaps we have narrated these events, but it is appropriate to narrate it at this place. Ayatollah Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum is standing in Karbala. He is in Karbala, standing on one of the towers, because there were gates through which people would enter the city of Karbala. And at this time, while he was standing on one of these towers, during the day of Ashura, he was watching the Azat Wairij. You all might have familiar with the Azat Wairij. This is when people on the day of Ashura, till today, in the millions run from a village Twairij in the outskirts of Karbala and run towards the Haram of Sayyid al-Shuhada. This is in acknowledgement of a tribe that lived within Twairij. When they heard Sayyid al-Shuhada is in battle, they ran towards Karbala, but by the time they reached Karbala, they found that Sayyid al-Shuhada is already died. In this julus, or in this matam procession, where people are running from Twairij towards the haram of Sayyid al-Shuhada, people are running barefoot, hitting their heads. This Marja Kabir is standing at the gates of Karbala, watching the people silently. At one time, he was with a group of his students. At one time, this Marja all of a sudden, without saying anything, without hearing anything, removes his amama, throws it on the ground, rips open the buttons of his jubba and dishdasha, runs down the stairs of this tower, Marja, in his 80s or 90s at that time, and starts running in the Azad Twairij, beating his head until he reached the haram of Sayyid al-Shuhada, and then he fell unconscious. Ajib, his students went towards the marja. They poured water on his face. They said, Sayyidna, Inta, you are a marja dini. You are an example for the entire Muslim ummah to emulate. How can you do actions like this? It is not out of your status to run like this in the majma. Ya marja, ya Sayyid. Do you know what Sayyid Bahrul Ulum replied back to them? He said, how can I not remove my amama and run barefooted and hit my head when I saw the master of our time, Imam Sahib al-Zaman, do the same thing in the Azad Twairij? For if the Imam beats his head and runs barefoot in that Twairij, if the Imam beats his head for Sayyid al-Shuhada, then who am I to not beat my chest? These are from the seerah of Ahlul Bayt. Why? Because it holds behind itself those lofty goals that we can achieve, the philosophy of which we have mentioned. But even this small little bit they want to take away from us. So keep strong in your aqaid. And this love and this azah that you perform, use it in your daily actions to follow the values of Sayyid al-Shuhada, and you will see how you rise towards the heights of perfection. And you will be crowned by being one of the Ansar and the Ashab of our 12th Imam. Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. The day of Ashura, Ya Shia, one of the most painful days in the history of mankind. For the battle was intense between the enemies of Yazid and the camp of Sayyid al-Shuhada. And the Ashab and the Ansar of Imam Hussein gave their everything, sacrificed their everything. Until a point after Zawal, Sayyid al-Shuhada stood and regrouped within the tents, and he saw that around him nobody remained except his nephews from the children of Bani Hashim. There is no more Hur, there is no more Burair, Joan, Zuhair ibn Kain, Sa'id, Abu Thamama, all the companions have died. There only remained the children of Bani Hashim, the children of Fatima. When Imam Hussein stood up in the tent, he saw that he is surrounded by these children who have removed their swords, willing to defend him till the last breath. When Sayyid al-Shuhada looked at their innocent faces that were beaming with light, his tears began to roll down his eyes. At that time, it is as if Abu al-Fadil came to Sayyid al-Shuhada. He said, "Oh my master Hussein, I am their uncle, just like the way you are their uncle. I cannot watch the children who were born in front of me be killed in front of me. Give me permission to fight." Sayyid al-Shuhada looks at Abu al-Fadil. He says, "You are the flag bearer of this army. If you were to fall, we would not have any more army." Allah, I don't know how those hours were within the tent of Imam Hussein, because the narrations tell us that as the children rushed towards Sayyid al-Shuhada, the children of Muslim bin Aqil, the children of Sayyida Zainab, the children of Ja'far, they would all come, and each one of them would ask for a chance for Sayyid al-Shuhada. On would tell Muhammad, "I will go before you." Muhammad would say, "No, I want to go before you." Abdullah ibn Muslim would say, "Ya Sayyid al-Shuhada, give me the chance to be the first one from Bani Hashim to give my life." They were all debating and competing over one another who would be the first one to give the honor of shedding their lives for Sayyid al-Shuhada. I wonder what must have gone through the heart of Imam Hussein, because at that time it was as if he had to choose which one of his nephews would be killed first and which one would be killed second or third. Allah. The narrations tell us that Sayyida Zainab came forward, pushing on, and Muhammad telling Sayyida Shuhada, Ya Sayyida Shuhada, oh my brother Hussein, these two children of mine, On and Muhammad, are a trust from my husband Abdullah ibn Ja'far, and we want to be the first ones from Bani Hashim to give sacrifice towards Sayyida Zahra. Sayyida Zainab tells Imam Hussein, with what face will I reply my mother Zahra if she were to ask me, Zainab, you preferred your own children over the children of Hussein? It is narrated at this time, the first person to come out, or one of the first people to come out from Bani Hashim, was the son of Sayyida Zainab by the name of Aun. Aun walked into the battlefield reciting a poem that, O enemies, if you do not know me, I am the son of Ja'far, that Shaheed who was Siddiq in the highest levels of Jannah. I am the son of that person who flies the heavens with two wings. Sufficient is it for me as fakhr that my uncle or my grandfather is he. On went into the battlefield and fought with all courage, with all valor, until the Makatil tell us that he killed 3 horsemen and 18 foot soldiers, until a person from Tamimi came and he struck on the head with a sword from behind. The Makatil tell us that a lot of the companions, when they were struck with the sword, they would cry out, they would say, Adrikni ya Mawlaya ya Aba Abdullah. But for On, you do not find this statement. When he fell to the ground, he didn't say Adrikni ya Hussein, because the way he was struck on his head from that very first blow, On died as he fell to the ground. Allah, we have 2 more shaheed to honor today. After On fell down and died, facing martyrdom, his brother Muhammad, apparently what is apparent from the Maktal is that he was younger than On. Muhammad walks into the battlefield. He looks at the dead body of his brother On, and he cries out, he recites a poem to the enemies. He says, I complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your enmity towards us, and in the way you have distorted the sunnah, and you have distorted the clear signs, and have made Hussein a prisoner amongst yourselves or between yourselves. The Maktal tells us that this young boy Muhammad came into the battlefield. He killed 3 people, but before he could attack the 4th person, they attacked him in a group from the side. He was struck by 2 swords on his head, one from the right and one from the left. Muhammad falls down to the ground. Sayyida Shuhada runs forward saying, these are the children of my sister. Allah, when Imam went back to the tents, you will not find any narration that states Zainab cried. We're asking her, Zainab, why did you not cry? Zainab says, I held back my tears lest I increase the grief of Hussein. Ya Shia, as the children of Zainab went out, On and Muhammad went out, today we want to honor the son of Muslim bin Aqil as well. Muslim, the son of Muslim bin Aqil, his name was Abdullah. When Abdullah came out to fight, he was carrying the same sword and had the same face and the same style of fighting as his father, Muslim bin Aqil, the Shaheed of Kufa, whose headless body was dragged in the markets during the days of Eid. Abdullah ibn Muslim comes out into the battlefield reciting a poem saying, today is the day that I am going to meet my father Muslim. Today is the day I will show these enemies a taste of my sword. The narrations tell us that Abdullah ibn Muslim killed 98 men from the enemies of Yazid. When the people saw that Abdullah ibn Muslim is undefeatable, they started shooting arrows at him, and from all sides. The tradition tells us that when they began to shower arrows at him, a person shot an arrow from close range towards the face of Abdullah. So Abdullah tried to cover his head with his hand. He says, but the arrow was shot from close range with such power that the arrow pierced his hand and pierced his forehead, sticking his head to his forehead. Abdullah ibn Muslim fell off his horse. His hand is stuck to his forehead because it is pierced by an arrow. At this time a person came and stabbed him in the heart with a lance. Abdullah ibn Muslim stopped breathing. The enemy's camp, or the Maktal, tells us that a person from the enemy wanted to take back his sword or take back his arrow. So he took the hand of Abdullah ibn Muslim. He tried to separate it from his forehead. When it couldn't, he pulled out the arrow breaking it off. Matam Hussein.
Zainab ne ro